Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Authentic Info Podcast. I'm your host, Adma Sandile Chao. Now, today we're looking at the highlights of the gala dinner, in preparation for the EFF's main event, which is their celebration of 10 years anniversary, which will be held at the FNB Stadium in Nazareth. So, we saw a lot of black people, especially business people, who bought that 1.2 table to sit with the president of the EFF. We saw them, there present. We saw a lot of, leaders of the EFF, present, supporting the ideology and the vision of the party. We saw the leaders of the EFF, dressed very nice and, representing professionalism and trying to show us that there are people who understand the vision of the EFF. There are business people who understand and agree with the ideology of the EFF. But one of the highlights is that it was when the EFF leader, Julius Malema, took to the podium to thank, the presence of people who support or who have been with the EFF from day one, and those who support the EFF. Those who are not ashamed that business will be taken, away from them for merely supporting the EFF, because we know that the EFF claim not to be associated with capital. But we saw a few white people who were there, even in the main table of 1.2. They were there present, and we saw the EFF leader thanking a person like Adriano Mazzotti. There were some controversial information or news, back in the days, accusing Mazzotti as a cigarette smuggler. Why is he associated with the EFF, or why is the EFF leader associated with Mazzotti? But we saw, the EFF leader dismissing such statements, and even attended, recently the I think there was a wedding of Adriano Mazzotti's son, if not his daughter, in Italy. We saw him with people like Shimza there. They met in Italy, and those were great moments. So it seems like he's not hiding this Mazzotti guy, and he's not ashamed of him. And he always, take a moment to thank his role in finding the EFF, because he says there was a moment back in 2013 where he was sitting with Floyd. They looked at each other because the IEC wanted money to register their party, and then only Mazzotti, could assist them. But we saw other business people coming in. It shows that the AFF is prepared and is very ready, to celebrate its 10 years anniversary, and it is also ready to govern, because this is what they are trying to show us, that they do have business people, and South Africa do have, black business people who are successful and who are not associated with the ANC and who are not associated with corruption per se, because they say that they are not associated with corruption. The AFF leader himself says that but when he was young, even when he was young, in his days in the ANC, when people start discussing, illegal issues, he would walk away, disagree or walk away. So we saw him inviting business people. We saw him, hosting a very, beautiful and professional gala dinner in preparation for the main event, which will be held on the 29th of July. And I think it's taking shape. It is proof that these guys are prepared and they invest a lot in the party, and people agree with the ideology of the EFF, and they're supporting it, and they are no longer hiding. If business people, can fill up that space the way they did, it shows that, black South Africans are ready. Black South Africans are willing to give, the EFF a chance to govern. And we have saw, when you check, the summary of all these events, heading to the main event, which will be held on the 29th of July, you can see that the EFF is more professional. It's run by young people. They understand, event management, because they've never hosted an event that failed in preparation for their 10-year anniversary. So it's something that we need to congratulate them. You cannot say that we are covering EFF matters only. Why are we not covering EFF? Because Fikile Mbalula is trying in the ANC. Why are we not covering the ANC matters? Fikile Mbalula is trying the ANC, but Fikile Mbalula is in the Tule House. Where are the people who are in parliament? Where are the people who are in union buildings? We don't see them, making briefings, public statements, updating us about, their portfolios. They are quiet, they are sleeping, they are lazy, they are doing nothing, they are not productive. So we ought to speak about the people who are always in our screens. We ought to speak about the people who are always, updating us of what's happening in their party. What is their vision? What is their mission? What have they achieved so far? What is it that they seek to achieve? They spoke about building a school, Winnie Mandela School. And now they have a farm. They say the school will be built in that farm. We saw the farm. It's big. It's huge. There's space. They say they're also going to build a conference hall. So these guys do not only speak about ownership by the time, promising that the state must own the means of production, the state must own the banks, things like that. They are displaying these things. They are putting us in our eyes to see them. They own a building. The EFF doesn't rent. They say Lutula House, they are renting that building. The ANC, for 30 years, it failed to build its own offices. The EFF, in less than 10 years, they own a building, that have their own offices. They have their own building. Their headquarters, they own everything. So now they have a farm. They want to build a school. They want to build a conference center or a conference hall that they will use to hold, to organize, and have these national elections. So they will always visit that farm, and it will help them to see the progress of the farm and the progress of the school that they want to build. So it's a move that makes us to believe or want to believe that the EFF is really ready to govern. A lot of people say I'm very biased when it comes to the EFF leadership and things like that. But what is it that we can talk about on the side of the EFF, of the ANC, other than corruption? What is it? What else can we talk about other than laziness? Other than ministers who are quiet, who are hiding? Other than ministers who are visiting, abroad with girlfriends? Other than ministers who are not in South Africa, they're always taking trips to say they want to study this, they want to study that. I heard that now that they said they took a trip to study, or it's either they want to take a trip or they took a trip to study how to hold a president accountable. What's that? You have to go to England to learn how to hold a president accountable. If someone is wrong, how to tell them that they are wrong and then they must step down. You don't have to go to England to do that. You don't have to tour Europe to do that, to know that. If a person's not delivering, the person's not delivering. If it affects the party, it affects the party. And then the person must step down. It's just that. You don't need to go somewhere to study how to deal with this person. So there's a little to talk about, in the ruling party. And the more that we have to talk about the ruling party or what the ruling party is doing, it's just letting all, even they fail to even maintain apartheid buildings. All these cities consist of skyscrapers built by the apartheid regime. We failed under the ANC-led government to maintain those buildings. Before building our own buildings, just to maintain them, we failed. There are many squatter camps in Johannesburg. There are many squatter camps in Gauteng as a whole, as a province. What is the ANC doing? Our people are organizing themselves because there's no party to organize its people. In the villages, the villages are inaccessible. You can't drive a Mercedes-Benz in some villages. They tell you that there's no road here. Under the ANC-led government. And these are the things that we only talk about if we have to talk about the ANC. But the EFF is giving us something to talk about. They promised to build a school. They bought a farm. They said, the EFF leader says, construction will start anytime soon, this year. They bought a building in Johannesburg. They own that building. Their offices are in a space where they don't rent. So that is ownership, and they speak about ownership. They teach us that there's no way that you can feel that the state owned the land if now that the state own water and electricity, we don't feel it. These are some of the things that they are teaching, that where there's ownership, there's life. And there's no way that we can feel like we don't own these things because they belong to the state. So sorry for diverting, but I wanted to congratulate them. It was a beautiful gala dinner, although I saw it visually. I couldn't attend. But I saw everything that happened. He even gave a speech. He even said to Floyd, if you think I'm no longer productive, don't organize against me. Just tell me, and then I will agree, and then I will step down. So he is also destroying the mentality of factions in the ANC, even in the EFF, even before they happen. To say that if people think that Floyd must now lead, they must come clear. It's just that. So thank you for watching. This is Authentic Info Podcast. I'm your host, Admas. Don't forget to subscribe.